Hello.
Hey, Mac.
How's it going?
Good. I'm just letting everybody log in. All right. All right. I just want to make sure everything looks like the stream's all up on both of them. And when I recorded it, when I recorded the videos, they went back to back. So there's about a minute and a half of the video. It just recorded twice. So I'll have to stop all of them. So I'll run that part. But I think we're ready to roll. But I was just making sure that you saw the straight talk, the true and false. Mac?
No, I did not.
All right. Well, it's good. We'll get your true reaction then. We'll do both of them. It's about slide 12.
Cool. Are we live right now? Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're all right. We'll take it off, put it on us, and get rolling. Are you ready?
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. And it's Darren and Mac back, VB Adrenaline, as we get ready to officially welcome in the class of 2027's recruiting season and President's Day weekend, even though the calendar officially switched a little bit this year, and January opened it up. But this has always kind of been the start of recruiting, and even back in the old timers, even back in your day, Mac, President's Day weekend was kind of when everything got itself going.
For sure. It was always a big weekend. Triple Crown started when I was playing club. I never got to play in the tournament, but my club started going like the year after I was done playing club. So I remember the good old days.
And we're going to talk a lot about Triple Crown, which is where I'll be at, and Mac will be, and the rest of our staff will be tuning in online, but that's where I'll be in Kansas City and where we've been. This whole thing got its start because we wandered into Triple Crown in Kansas City about 7 years ago. But there are tournaments, of course, in Washington, D.C., St. Louis, down in Florida as well. But all over, pretty much every team is playing somewhere this weekend, and coaches putting on the miles. And whether they start out in Kansas City, end up in Kansas City, splitting duties. Interesting that way as you talk with coaching staffs, how they split up the miles. And if they're putting everybody in one, or they splitting up the days. I remember last year, you talk about the Metro team, which I believe plays in DC, which makes sense. One of the few power national teams that doesn't go to Kansas City. But so many of the top 10, 15 programs were heading out the last day of Kansas City. They're flying late that night so they could get to the last day, if nothing else, only to watch that Metro team, which tells you just how much talent was on that team, that all those coaches were going so they could get eyes on them early in the season. Which was interesting that all those coaches were going to watch basically one team.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I just talked about in an article or a video that I just did about how at Triple Crown, though, a coach can stand at a corner with 4 courts and watch all of their recruits on 4 courts if they really wanted to. They don't even have to move. So it's like kind of a no-brainer to spend quite a bit of time there. But like you said, I mean, sometimes you got to go. The Metro kids know how to ball. So sometimes you got to split time. You got to figure it out.
Right. We'll talk about their team a little bit later on when we do our one of our segments here with our Straight Talk recruiting and our true and false on some myths and some urban legends with recruiting questions and things that parents think, and it deals specifically with that Metro team from last year. We'll get to that later, but we kind of kick off the class of 2027. And even though when you think about with our team and how far we've come, another segment we put together tonight is, if we don't talk about you, we're going to talk about so many more athletes in the class of 27 than we did a year ago. But obviously there's only so many we can get to. But if we don't, do not feel bad, because when you see the list of athletes that we didn't even have a clue about at this time last year, you're not going to feel bad, because All-Americans, kids that signed at top 5, top 10 schools that we hadn't even heard of at this time last year. Now, I will say with this class, we are so much farther ahead as we've grown than we were a year ago. It feels like we've known these kids for years compared to the class of 26. And I feel like a year from now we'll be that much further ahead. But that's what this weekend is for. We'll come back with another 30 names that we'll put in. It just, that's the way coaches are too. I mean, they're running around. They may have question marks. They're crossing off, they're highlighting, they're going to a court to watch somebody, and they're writing down another name. They may be going to watch a teammate and they write down another teammate and cross off somebody else. And Matt, talk about that real quick, the make or break of President's Day, and that you don't maybe earn a scholarship, that this isn't the end all be all, that it's the start.
For sure. It's definitely the start. I mean, recruiting just opened up. Like coaches were just allowed to go to club tournaments in late January. So the first weekend of recruiting kicked off then, but some coaches don't even use those recruiting days. You have to understand that college coaches only get a certain number of recruiting days. So they're only allowed to go to those club tournaments a lump sum amount of days during the club season. So they use those very sparingly. And because President's Day it's late enough into coaches' spring ball seasons. They've kicked off their seasons. Their maybe mid-years have come in. They've gotten them off and running. The team at home is able to kind of run themselves. So then your head coach can head out for a day or for a weekend and go check out the courts and finally get their start on that. So it's not the end by any means. It is not when you're going to earn your scholarship, but it is the beginning very much so. It's when the coaches are going to finally get their eyes on those kids that they've been wanting to. And like I said, they can stand on a corner and catch so much good volleyball at this tournament or at any tournament really President's Day weekend, because there's so many teams playing so much volleyball going on.
And we do, and we joke about it and we understand. Such a big part of what we try and do is education, because this goes so fast from now until June. And that's why we really advocate for taking your time, because you don't understand and all the misconceptions out there. And we hear a couple names and we say, well, so-and-so has worked so much harder than every other program at recruiting my daughter so far. You got to understand, there's a couple programs out there that are much more blessed and much more funded than everybody else. Okay. That's just the way it is. Okay. And they're able to do that. Mm-hmm. There are very, very, very good programs and very, very, very good recruiters and coaches that have no idea about 80% of this class yet. They maybe were able to watch you at nationals. Like we could reach out right now and we have an idea of 100 more names than they do, because they were working on 2026. Mm-hmm. They're not looking at 10 kids a class. Okay. It's the recruiting field is not even, people. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is able to pick out 8 kids, focus on 8, sign their 2 or 3 and move mm-hmm. on. Right. It's just, some coaches are still working on their 2026 class right now. Like there are still open spots for 2026s. So those coaches probably haven't even, they've definitely shifted a little bit into the 2027s, but they're still trying to close out their 26s. So there's still so much room for everything to happen. There's time for it all. And let's be honest, not every program has a jet that you can just take and fly wherever you want and pop into a high school and then fly back and get to practice the next day. It's just not like that. And so some programs are able to spend more time on 9th graders than others. And so that doesn't mean they're working harder. That means they have advantages. And so everybody else is catching up right now, and they will start working very diligently now. And so that's just a misconception of, it doesn't mean they're working harder. It means everybody else is doing what they can with their resources. And that sometimes I know how hard everybody else works. And if mm-hmm. apples and oranges were apples and apples, I just think, right. That's one big thing that we have to understand is if everybody had the same resources, I think quite a few other coaches would work just as hard. And if everybody had jets, they would be flying into schools as well.
Right. And it's almost like would they work just as hard? I would argue those mid-major schools that don't have the funding might be working even harder because of how much they have to grovel and crawl to the top to just try and make it to one of those high school matches for a 2026 right now.
Right. Well, not even mid-majors. We're talking Power Fours. We're talking,
for sure.
Yeah. And like you said, they're closing up 26s and they're not worried about 28s and 29s.
Oh gosh, no.
They just can't. So that's one thing that we hear a lot of. Well, so-and-so has just worked harder. I mean, they couldn't name 29s right now. They couldn't name 28s because they're starting to learn 27s. So just take that into account when you say somebody's worked hard. They'll start working hard now that they get to the chance, because like you said, they're in the gym running their own spring practices right now. And take that into effect. They're not inviting 7th graders to camp because they're worried about freshmen.
Right. And I will also throw out there that this is the other side of it, is it's really not hard to send you a camp brochure. No one's actually working that hard to just send you a camp brochure. So if you really think that someone is working that much harder because you got a camp brochure in the mail when you were in 6th grade, I would take a few steps back and look at a big picture. It's not hard to send your entire club team a camp brochure because they found your emails on your website.
You may just recognize a certain camp brochure more than another camp brochure, right? All right, off our soapbox and on to the NIT preview show, which it is very, very popular. But first of all, different coverage from us over the past couple years as the NIT and volleyball grows. Our coverage will look a little bit different this year. First of all, we will not have our daily live show. There will be a big love volleyball tournament that's taken up a lot of the main floor. And so we'll be doing the normal beat reporting like everybody else. So we're going to have a lot of daily interviews with athletes. So we'll be roaming around doing what we do at every other tournament, and which will really be cool, getting to talk to a lot of people and a lot of parents and a lot of coaches and just getting to know a lot of the class. So look for me stomping around and looking for interviews and just talking with a lot of you. Also, we'll do a Friday podcast from somewhere. As you know, in Kansas City, the Wi-Fi is not amazing. So we don't know if we'll set that up in the convention center, at the hotel. We might drive to Arkansas to get Wi-Fi, but wherever we can get Wi-Fi to do a podcast from, we'll do it somewhere, hopefully with a guest, and just talk about what's going on. That is camp day, and you can tell volleyball's growing because there's more and more camps, and everybody's getting their hands on the cookie jar at the Friday of the Triple Crown NIT and taking advantage of that. So a lot going on there. And then daily articles and updates, Mac and the staff back home updating everything, and a lot of reports on prospects, names to know from the NIT, and then we'll get comments and updates from Mac and some of our other evaluators that are roaming around. Mac watching a ton of game action back when she's not pro volleyball in it herself. And so that'll be our coverage this year, but looks a little bit different. We will not have the stage and the studio live show this year. We'll be on the floor getting interviews and updates and notes galore. So that'll be different. But back again, what does President's Day do, though? You talked about coaches. What can it do? And I'll give some notes of what I've seen the last couple of years. What you've heard from coaches when you've been there and just talking with coaches, what does it do to start their recruiting or continue their recruiting on notes that they've had, that they have?
Yeah, I think honestly, President's Day and the tournaments around President's Day give coaches the opportunity to see players in the closest to a college environment that they're going to get at this level. So it allows them to take notes on players playing against some of the other top prospects. Maybe they might even get lucky enough to have two of their top kids on the same court playing against each other on day one of a tournament, which is kind of unheard of usually. But it allows them, I mean, usually their only opportunity is nationals, and nationals is almost too late for them to get their notes that they want to get. So Triple Crown is, I keep calling it a mini nationals because it's all of the best of the best. And this President's Day weekend, it's all of the best people playing on the same weekend. Everybody's playing on President's Day weekend. So it's getting your name out there. It's allowing coaches to see you play in an environment that is most similar to what you will be in their gym as well. So coaches are able to get notes on kids that are the most accurate as possible, and it gives them a good starting point. They're like, okay, we saw this kid play at nationals last year. Maybe we saw him play for 10 points last season at the end of their season. Now we're at the beginning of their next season. How much did they grow in the off season? It gives them a gauge of that. And then it also gives them a good point to look back at nationals at the end of the year. They can be like, okay, where were they at Triple Crown? Did we have more questions when we were at President's Day weekend? And do we still have those same questions? Maybe that's not the kid we still want. Or have they solved all of those problems? Any question marks we have been erased, and they're highlighted at the top of our list now once they get to nationals because they've watched them develop since President's Day weekend. So it's just a really good starting point and gives them big picture view of what they're going to be looking for and the growth that they're wanting to see.
Yeah, and so everybody that maybe is a new follower of us, we go over this time after time. We're going to talk a lot about PPV. And again, the major difference with us as opposed to other sites is we don't do rankings. We do college projections, right? Like a college coach. So college coaches don't look at rankings. They project to when you're 20, 21, 22, right? So like it or not, whether it makes you happy or not, they don't care how you play when you're 16, right? They care what you're going to play like when you're 20, right? So they're projecting,
yes.
Right? So if Mac was the same height that she was at 16 as she was at 13, that's not a great projection for a college coach, right? And so we talk a lot about high ceiling, low ceiling, because that's a term college coaches use, right? And so we talk about things like stats don't matter. All tournament team doesn't matter. Getting written up in an article by us or any other site doesn't matter. Those are things that don't matter to college coaches. What they look at is how have you progressed since last summer to now? Are you stronger? Do you explode more off the floor than when they saw you in June or July? Mm-hmm. Those are things. The girl across the net that maybe you were dominating last summer, maybe she's closed the gap. Right. And those are things that are hard for parents to see because parents aren't looking through the same colored lenses as a college coach, nor should they. Right. But those are things that we kind of look at because college coaches look at them as a college projection. And sometimes with rankings, they're ranking you as to what you're doing right now or what you did last year. And that's not what we do. And so that's important to realize. And a lot of times that's what college coaches are doing, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty much to a T what college coaches are doing.
Right. And so they don't, not that they don't care, but they don't care what you're doing now. They care what you're going to be doing when you're 20. Yeah. And they're projecting what kind of young woman you're going to be in their program in 4 years.
And they do care a little bit what you did when you were 13, because if you're the same player at 13 that you are at 16, then that probably tells them a lot about what the player you're going to be like when you're 20. So they're looking at you when you're younger as like a baseline, but it's more of a baseline. It's exactly that. It's not that they don't care about your stats when you were 13. They want to see growth. They want to see how much you can improve over the time.
Right. And the word potential, even though it's dangerous, is really big to college coaches because the other thing with technique, we'll hear somebody say like, man, her technique's perfect. College coaches don't care as much about that. They really don't, because they will have hours after reps after reps after reps with you to improve on that. Right. And the fact that you can touch 10 foot 8 inches as opposed to somebody that'll never touch higher than 10.4, they can rep the heck out of the technique to improve on that. And so those are just little things to look at when we talk about projections that we do different. And that's why we don't do rankings, because it's more projection and it isn't an exact science. It's just things to look at. And so that's what coaches look at as maybe, hey, I remember seeing her 6 months ago. Wow, you can tell how much stronger she's gotten. Or, boy, she's grown an inch, you can tell. Or she's jumping much higher. Or, hey, I think she was getting dominated at the net at nationals. She's closing that gap. Those are all positive things that may make somebody move up a board or down a board.
For sure.
Right. And we, with the untrained eye, can't catch those things. And that's why rankings by us or the common man just don't matter. Right. So there we are. All right. So with that, let's move into the positions and talk about just some of the names in the class of 2027. And start with the, as far as just kind of the watch list. Mac, let's go through some of the names. We threw the opposites together with the outsides. Let's just go through some of the names we're going to talk about.
I would say half of the outsides will end up as opposites in college anyways, and half of the opposites will end up as outsides. So at this point, they're interchangeable anyways.
Yeah. And so I think that is one storyline, is the opposite position maybe not having a dominant, just a dominant go-to as of right now.
For sure. I talked about that, I think, in my morning coffee with Mac last week, about the opposite position being so necessary. And it's really not a big thing in club ball right now. It's huge at the pro game. It's getting so much bigger at the college game. And I think naturally the next progression obviously would for it to be trickling down to the club game. And I think some of the strongest club teams right now are the ones that have a solid right side attacker, especially one that plays 6 rotations. So that opposite spot is definitely one that's up for the taking. And I think it's an undervalued one, but one that is becoming much, much bigger and much more of a part of an entire offense. It used to be like get a power outside, but now if you can get one power outside and one power right side, you're sitting really pretty.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of these names as we kind of go through and preview. We've got a couple new effects this year to our coverage and tried some new things. One of the things we're going to do throughout the year is break down some head-to-head matchups, and not so much to compare or say who's better, but to give you guys or viewers maybe something that college coaches look at, right? If the way this whole VB Adrenaline started years ago was this naive new volleyball fan who used to be a football coach said, I want to know if the best volleyball program in the country had one scholarship at setter, who would they take? The year happened to be Bergen Riley and Ella Swindle. And I said, who do they take and why? I just want to know that. Who do they take and why? Break it down for me. And nobody could give me a great answer. And so we came up with a segment that's going to be called Head to Head, where you just kind of look at a couple prospects that might be kind of similar. And we just break them down as maybe like 2 colleges might. Right. And as I do, so that'll be one of our segments. And as we head into one here, these are a couple that are on the radar. So first of all, Ms. Connors, you are not an outside, you're an opposite, and that's not Lauren Adel, but Lauren Forelli, first of all, one of the best 6 rotations out of Arizona. And speaking of Arizona, these ladies took a big risk doing this for us. As you see, some of the names that we're going to talk about this year. And then our first, excuse me. So here's our first head-to-head. All right. Tessa Larkin out of Arizona. And then Kate Zlowski out of Michigan. All right. And so really similar, actually the same size.
Yep.
similar arms. Break them down, Mac, and talk about very similar players, I think.
Yeah. I mean, very similar players. I think the strength to both of them is their control. I think watching AZ Storm play, they are stacked. Like every corner you look in on that team, it's hard to find a player that isn't extremely, really, really top tier talented. Not that Legacy isn't. They've got some like mid to top tier talent. I think you're going to defend Marley Smith till you die. But I think she is a really talented player that does really well for that team and puts her hitters in really good positions. So I think she's one of the top tier on that Legacy squad. But there's a lot of different levels on Legacy's team where I look at Arizona Storm and I'm like, that's a team full of really top tier kids, like all in the top. So I don't think Tessa Larkin stands out as much as Kate does on her team. I think that's a big difference. But I think Tessa, when watching her, has such a fast arm swing along with her ball control that creates the steadiness both on offense and in serve receive. She's a player that will be an outside hitter all the way through. Her ball control is definitely one of her strengths. And then on the other side, Kate is also, she's a ball control player too. She's a good passer and she has a good pass to attack rhythm. But I think her steadiness comes more from her offensive side, where her team relies on her to get points. If they need a ball to score, they're throwing it up to Kate every single time, where Tessa isn't the one that has to do it every single time because her team is so well-rounded. So her steadiness comes in different ways, and I would say it comes mainly from her ball control, whereas Kate is more offensive mentality centered.
One thing, though, that surprises me when I looked at Kate's numbers is just how high she plays, because her touch point, that it doesn't appear that way, but when she's playing, I think touch at like almost 10 feet 4 inches, I think, for her, that it doesn't seem like she plays that high, but she's sneaky high with her athleticism.
Yeah, I would agree. I think she's sneaky with her athleticism in general. Like I don't look at her in that group and think that she is going to be the dominant player. And then she's the one that she gets a lot of kills in their matches because she has to. She has to be a really high point scorer for that team to score. Because if she's scoring a lot of points, then the other team has to be really worried about her. She does a good job of taking on the load and she can handle that. So that's a really big strength for her too, is that she has a heavy load and she handles it really well. And in the big matches, when she is handling it really well and she's getting a lot of points, it opens up the rest of her teammates. So then it makes everybody else look that much better because she is so dominant.
So let me ask you this though. Could a Tessa, if you switch them, could she do the same thing if she was on Legacy?
Yes, I think so. I think for sure. I think Tessa could carry the load in Legacy as well. I think, but just because she doesn't have to, it's a hard comparison. That's something that's really difficult sometimes as a player. If you have a match, or anybody can do it for one match. What's difficult is when you have to do it for an entire weekend, for an entire tournament. So it would be a tough task for Tessa to go into a Legacy team where she has to carry the brunt of it and go get a lot of kills and be point scoring, probably scoring at least like getting like 6 to 7 kills a set for her team to win. So I think she could do it. She has the power for sure, but it's a mental side that is really difficult. And I don't know that she doesn't have it. She just has never had to use it. So we've never had to see it from her.
Well, and I'll tell you a couple of the teams, obviously national championship caliber, both of these squads. And I would, whatever the price of admission would be for a day to the club tournament, would be worth it to watch these guys square off. Two of the best teams in the nation and two of the classiest outsides in the country. Both of these girls, to interview them is a treat. And two of the top, I don't think locker room wise you go wrong either one of them that you get in your program,
Sure.
which says a lot about them, and going to be fun watching their process for sure. So Tessa and Kate, our first head-to-head. And I think we got one more here as we wrap these guys up. And the next one's a shorter one as we get these guys out of here. All right, so now we got a heavyweight matchup here. All right, so Ireland Real, Shea Witherspoon could be talking potential player of the year, maybe number one player. So we could be talking about Valley, even though, okay, maybe some of this is one that we talk about rankings, okay, not agreeing with our PPV at all. Okay, if you looked at one of the other publications' rankings a little bit ago that everybody was retweeting, not at all. Okay, I think Ireland was like 36. All right, not according to people that played late into December. Let's just say that. Okay, all right. So I will just say, talking about character, Ireland plays with as much energy. Okay, to the point that some people said maybe is too nice. Okay, wrong. I will say this about Shea. My questions, and I interviewed her about this, was her having to get upset to play her best, right? Like almost having to the other team to like trash talk her or get her upset to play her best. I've interviewed her twice now in the last couple months, and I've seen a huge growth in maturity. She just seems the most college ready, maturity and physical right now of an athlete in the class.
Yeah. She's at Rockwood Thunder, correct? That's a typo? Yes. She is a very, very talented outside hitter that I think I agree with that. If you had to throw her into a college gym right now, I think she would figure out a way to be successful. I think part of what you said, and like the fact that you got to get, she said she's got to get angry to play her best, I don't think is a bad thing. I think that comes a lot in college too. There's a lot of players that need to get all riled up to play their best, and they find ways to do that. So if she's one of those players that just finds a way to play her best when she gets all fired up, I think that's a good way to go about it. I do think it's funny that we have these two head to head, and she's one that likes to play angry, and Ireland is just the nicest as can be. And I mean, that's what talking to coaches too, and even her club coach in the past has said that she is so nice to everybody on the court, but that she's got this ultra competitive and fiery side to her that just helps her be such a strong attacker. So I think the nice versus the angry, I guess we could call it here in this head-to-head, there's no right answer to it. And I think they're both really talented. I agree. I think Ireland is one of the top 5 attackers in this class, no questions asked. Watching her play, for her size, the control that she has over her body already is one of those things that coaches are looking at. That's one of those things where they see her playing at 15, 16s and see the control that she has over her body. And they're like, okay, this kid is going to be able to carry a load when she's 19, 20, 21 years old. So that side of that for Ireland is really strong. And then I think, like you said, Shea could play right now. So I think her arm speed, the quickness of her ability to move fast on a court, she can move. Her team runs a pretty fast offense, so she's able to speed up when she needs to be sped up. And that's something I think that's a big adjustment for outside hitters when they get to the college game, is everything moves just a little bit faster. So if they're behind, they're going to be even more behind in college. She is right there with the speed that she needs to be, so she'll have no problem catching up in college.
All right. So with that, as we move on, and let's go to our actual rankings. Here are the top 10 according to our PPV. And so some of those names, we have Shea currently at 298, and then Olivia Henry, another one that maybe a college PPV doesn't agree with somebody's rankings. I think another publication had hers like 42nd. And I would just say that others may completely not agree with that. So 296 is where we have her, Ireland at 295, and then Tessa Larkin at 286, and then McKenna McIntosh, somebody we're going to talk about in a little bit as far as strength. And that's somebody I just don't think gets talked about in the same breath as some of these other names. And now then Wes has maybe the most loyal fan base and the most loyal followers of any kid in the country, and one of the best attitudes. It's easy to like her out of California. Lauren, who we saw, Kate, Gentry out of Texas, and then Isabella, who we saw in our warm-up video as well. So that's our top 10. Anybody you want to talk about specifically out of that top 10 before we move on?
Wesley's always a fun one to talk about. I mean, she's got so much power, and she, like you said, is so fun to just listen to, watch. In any interview with her, it always does so well, because who doesn't want to listen to her? I mean, she's so lively, has so much personality, and you can see it on the court when she plays too. So I think that combined with her strength, she's going to be a force to reckon with wherever she ends up in college for sure. I know we're going to talk about McKenna McIntosh later, but she jumps so well. This is a great list of outside hitters. And I think what we always say about the PPV too is that some of these girls it could sway any day. The where we project them to be is up here at the top, and one could be higher than the other, one could be lower than the other. There's no algorithm to figure this out. If there is, we'll be rich someday if we can figure that out. But right. What we've got here is a top list of some really strong outside hitters that are all projected to make an impact in college volleyball.
Right. What I like is we've talked with all the top three, and all three of them took a dip. We talk about the PPV going up and down. And like, for example, Ireland came out of nationals, and we thought she had an amazing nationals, and she struggled a little bit at the beginning of the high school season and took a dip and really went back and worked on some things. And again, is playing amazingly at the start of club and took a rise. Olivia Henry talked about, again, it's not like they're going to be very, very high recruits. Okay. They're going to be. So I always find it funny knowing where they're probably a very good chance they're going to end up, and how those schools always broadcast, right? Their social media people say they were ranked number blah, blah, blah in blah, blah, blah. I want them to stay where they're ranked right now. So those publications have to say they were ranked number 42, and then their whole fan base is going to be ticked off because they never have anybody ranked number 42. So right. I kind of want them to stay there, but they won't. But I'm like, they all took dips and they just work their way out of it, right? Because that's the way college is. That's the way where they're going. You take dips. I mean, you get that more than anybody. You keep working, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you never want to stay steady either. I mean, progress is not a flat line. It is not one directional, one dimensional. It's up and down. There's highs and lows. And like, these girls understand that. And that's what's going to make them really strong college players.
Right. And they all talked about what they needed to do. And it was intensity. And it wasn't a day-to-day thing. It was what do I do in an average match to stay great, right? Like, what do I do on an average day to get better rather than not playing my best? And anyways, they have improved, and this weekend will be really important to see. And Olivia at IMG Academy, her big thing was talking with her and talking about playing against girls 2 years older and how that's been so good for her, not being the best in the gym every day and having to the strength training and the training like she's at a college program already. And that was really important for her to, get beat up on a little bit, right? Yeah. And get in a way, mentally tougher in that training regimen. And that showed when we saw her a month or so ago. And so anyways, those are three very good ones at the top and a great list that we'll talk about as we move on. But you've had a chance to watch a lot of just film overall and a lot of girls. And this is what I like about it. Let's go through real quick and talk about just some of the under the radar that you've seen. And this is what I like about what we're doing this year and about what you're doing specifically. Real quick, a point, and let's whip through about 10 under the radar athletes that you've had a chance to watch.
Yeah, I have been watching lots of volleyball, and I've checked out quite a few teams. Casey Power is one of my teams that I've been watching quite a bit, and Bo Bronson is one of their outside hitters. She jumps really well and has such a good high contact point that allows her to tool blocks like crazy. So she's leading that team and does a really good job of it. Berkeley France is another outside hitter for Arizona Sky. She also tools really well, but something that she does really well for her team is that she passes. She's a really strong passer. She plays 6 rotations and does that well for them. Then not France, but French, Ellie French, the Libero for ABC 16s. She's just kind of controlling the backcourt like I haven't seen a ton of liberos do. She's doing a good job kind of creating momentum in serve receive, which is a hard thing to do as a libero, but she's back there just making plays, and that's something that you got to do. Then Lila Ellsworth, an outside hitter from Arizona Storm. She's a really good reach and snap kind of hitter. She has a really high arm swing. She's a little bit undersized, but she still does a good job using her length as much as possible and reaches high and then swings fast and snaps. So she's got a really high arm swing. Okay, Sinai Severlo, I think is how you pronounce that. She is a middle blocker for Forza 1. She is tall. She's 6'2", and she uses every bit of it. Watching her block is something that I never expected to see from a player this tall, and being able to use her long limbs to benefit her. She does such a good job of just being calm, cool, and collected, and then jumping up and attacking at the net. I watched her stuff block a couple overpasses, and I was like, holy cow, this kid knows how to move very well. She's still a little bit green and has some room to grow. So I think that's why she's a little bit under the radar still, but she is definitely up and coming. And she's one of those that she plays with Wesley. She's going to get noticed because she plays on a court with players that are very talented like that. And then Sasha Cromer, another Casey Power kid, the setter for Casey Power. I think the duo between Bo Bronson and Sasha Cromer is what's making me love this Casey Power team so much right now. But it's a really well-rounded group that they have, and she does a good job of running the offense, leading it. And I love that she's so offensive. I love an offensive setter, and she is leading the charge with that.
I think before we move on, you bring up a great point that we talk about a lot. It doesn't matter how you get looked at, the fact that you get looked at. And with Severlo and a couple of teams, that Forza team is one I'm so excited to watch. We just messaged another one of their athletes tonight saying, hey, make sure you remind us. We got a lot of courts to cover, but we want to get to your court. There's 3 or 4 on that team that, hey, it doesn't matter who you go to watch. Coaches will see you, and you never know when you're going to get noticed. And you bring up a great point. She's going to get seen, and you're right on about Cromer with what you said you saw on film. They kind of snuck up on us. And the other thing you bring up is all of these athletes have sent in their player profiles. And yeah, we're advocating for that. But when there's 3,000 athletes out there, sometimes that does help clue us in.
Oh my gosh.
Because we at least
I've been sitting on my computer, like just searching up teams and then watching and finding names that stick out. You know how much easier it is when all I have to do is head over to the site and be like, oh, that's a new name. Let's check her out. It's so much easier to just head to the player profile. So let me tell you, that's a good way to do it.
It definitely narrows it for sure. And then we went over Bro, but I want you to talk about Kaylin real quick, and then I want to touch on that team before we move on. So talk about Kaylin real quick.
I mean, she's a great player on a great team. She does a good job of creating the opportunities that she needs to see. Her team is really stacked. She's another one of those players that, because she's surrounded by so much talent, she doesn't have to be the one that's standing out every single time, and she doesn't have to take over any match, but she has the capability to take over. So there are matches where we'll see her go off and she's the one scoring as many points as possible. And yeah, I mean, that A5 team, stacked team. So she's a great player on a really good team, and she's another one that's definitely going to get seen because of the people that she's around and because she can take over like she knows how to.
Yeah, was it 2 weeks ago after their first tour of Texas? I don't know if they won their division, and she posted highlights, and then I think their entire front row might have posted highlights, and all of them had player profiles, and then they all posted highlights, and you watched the opposite. I watched Kaylin, and then their middle posted highlights, and we were all messaging each other like, oh, we should interview her.
Yeah.
No, we should interview her. And they're like, let's just interview all of them.
Yeah.
And then, oh, by the way, their setter is pretty decent.
She's all right.
Yeah. And then they added a Libero this year who's holding down the back row. You're a pretty good team, so excited to watch them. The entire team, A5 Gabe, is playing great, so we could interview all of them. But Kaylin is a name that just kind of jumped up on us this first month or so of the year, and I've got reports, and her PPV has jumped about 18 points already. So excited to see her, but that entire team. And another one that'll have plenty of eyes on it. I think we were messaging somebody and said, hey, here's somebody under the radar. And they're like, she plays with MJ. She won't be under the radar. So
not for long.
No, definitely not. So our first group of under the radar athletes. So now, speaking of that setter from A5, give us a tip on the setters watch list. Break this group down before we head into a couple of the athletes to watch.
I think there are up years and down years for setters for sure. This is without a doubt an up year. We are at the top of the class. There are some really strong setters that are going to make some serious dents in college volleyball, which makes me very excited. I mean, I hope to get to watch a lot of these setters continue to play very long careers in college, some of them at some of the highest levels. But yeah, there's a lot of skill, a lot of discipline, a lot of setters that are of really decent size, and then some that aren't as tall, but are still probably going to end up at some of the best colleges in the nation and making a really strong impact on those teams. So a really good group of setters, and I'm excited to keep watching them.
Yeah, and so a lot of what we've talked about that, a couple with Ellery DeBoer and then Mallory Bosinger, who played up. That's a crazy story, but they were playing up a year ago, and Mallory was actually playing up 2 age groups for her entire career. And Ellery DeBoer, right there in the middle, is still playing up an age group, but Bosinger's coming back down 2 age groups to play with her own age now. And so some crazy stories. And like somebody told me this week, they're like, yeah, make your list, but there's going to be 3 or 4 athletes that just come out of nowhere that you're going to add to this list. That's going to make this list even deeper. And then Miss Smith, who we'll talk about here in a second. So let's go in and our middle. How do we get our middle? Well, you want to, let me see here. How do we get this? We're going to have to come back. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties here. Let me see if I can get to our middles. Let's go on and let me see if I can skip ahead here. Ooh, that's not it. We'll talk about that here. You keep talk about our top middles, and I'll skip to this, and then I'll come back. All right. I'll get ahead.
we're skipping over to middles, or are we talking
Hey, there we
setters?
go. Hey, there we go. Sorry,
Oh.
everybody. All right, here we go. Here's some of our top setters. All right. Z, there's this Bolsiger, and there's Laura Adele, who's actually from Canada. She's playing in Florida this week.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Z is from Utah, Club V, another team that we're really interested in watching a little bit more. We watched them last year. All right, so we go to that and our setters watch list. Talk about your favorites as you just have watched the film so far.
Oh gosh, put me on the spot to memorize these names. I'm much better when I see them, but I mean, MJ stands out. There we go. That's helpful. Marissa stands out. I mean, she's so tall. I remember watching her on a court maybe 2, even 3 years ago. Oh, wow. I bet it was almost 2.5 years ago, seeing her on a court, and everyone was on that court already. She's a kid. I think she was maybe 13 years old, and every single coach is on that court. And I'm standing next to Jalen Reyes, and I'm just talking with him. And he's like, I'm like, what is everyone watching? And they're like, the next Mac Pedraza. That's what he said to me. I got a kick out of that one. I think she has the potential and very well could be better than me. She's a incredible setter. She has such a high contact point. She likes to throw the ball down. She likes to dump. She likes to be aggressive. So she's a player that is going to be a talented college player. I think she's going to keep growing. And if she does, then her ceiling and her potential is limitless. I could talk about Marissa Jones all day, so I will move on from that and then go down the list. I mean, Marley Smith, I think that's one of your faves. You could talk about her all day.
Well, you can talk about her skill. I can only talk about her intangibles, which are through the roof, and we'll talk about her on another team later. I don't think you go wrong with the person that she is and the leader that she is. And she was the MVP of nationals, so I'm assuming she's a decent setter. But you can talk about her skill-wise.
She scoots around the court. The way that she moves and her ability to go pick up balls everywhere is unlike a lot of setters. Because she is a little bit undersized, the only downfall to that is maybe her blocking, but she plays a lot bigger than she is. She likes to attack. She goes over with 2 more often than not, but she likes to be offensive. She's puts the ball in hittable spots. End of the day, you need a setter that's going to put the ball in a place where your hitters can hit it, and she does that potentially better than anyone else on that list. Her location is what's going to set her above a lot of other setters. So just because she's undersized, I don't think is going to have that much of a detriment on her where she ends up, because she's so good at moving around and putting the ball in hittable spots. I think another setter that's
my whole thing has just always been that how much she's won, her intangibles. My whole thing has been getting her in that other gym that she's never been invited to, and that's always been my thing over some other ones. And that's what I think is too bad. And I think she would do a lot of good just with her leadership abilities. Sure. And do I think she's going to the Olympics someday? No, but I think a lot of people in that gym aren't going to the Olympics. And I think she would add a lot of leadership, and that's my thing. I just think there's others that have been invited that she adds a lot other than her size. Right. And that's my only thing as I look at others on here that have gone. They're not going to the Olympics, I don't think either, but I don't coach, but and that's my thing is I've just asked a lot of people, and I think that might be the polarizing kid in the class where you know how it is. You ask one coach, yeah, we absolutely want to offer. And then you ask somebody else, no, not at all. And that's how it is with the setter position, right?
100%. It's a very it's not a one size fits all. You've got to find a setter that's going to fit your program, and one that fits one program might not be what the other one's looking for. Right. And that doesn't mean they're not good enough for that program. It means they're not the person that they're looking for. They're not maybe they're not looking for an undersized setter because they don't have a right side that can play good defense behind that shorter setter with the block. There's so many pieces that go into it. It's not so cut and dry as this player is better than this player. You've got to think about what the coach wants out of their program. So there's a lot that goes into it, and Marley Smith will find a home. There's no question about that. So she will be fine, but it's just whether or not people will look at it in the sense that oh, well, she didn't go there because she wasn't good enough. No, she just might not be what they were looking for.
So how many then you have to cross off about 4? Automatically, you have to cross off about 4 girls from this list because they're under 6 feet, right?
Potentially, it's what you're looking for. It depends on what you want. The setter that plays on my pro team right now, she's 5'6". She's running the offense.
She's only 5'6".
She's running the offense at 5'6". So Natalia Valentin Anderson is a professional player that's been playing for 15 years, and she is 5'6" as a setter. So she moves around on the court. She brings other things. She plays really strong defense, and we have a really strong right back defender that is working day in and day out to play good defense behind her. So that's something that it works in our system. That's one of those things. So it just depends on the system that the coach wants. And maybe a coach doesn't want to have to train their right back to play gritty defense. So they're not going to go find a 5'8", 5'9" setter. They're going to go find the 6'1", 6'2" setters.
Let me ask you about Bryn Stevens, because I have this question, and last year this happened with the TAB team, and our gal's going to is verbal to Penn State, and with TAB running the 6'2". And but Bryn, does it just matter on the school, or does that hurt them when their club team runs a 6'2", that the colleges don't get to see them just run the show? Does it not matter? And do they ever look at them and say, do colleges look at them and say, you're going to be an outside for us? Or, an opposite for us? How do colleges look at it? Does it just depend on the school? Because she's amazing as a hitter as well.
Right. I think it's one of those things that can only benefit you at some stretch. I think it is tough if your club is only running 3 rotations, but she's playing 6 rotations and getting to hit quite a bit too. Sometimes she isn't, they're running all sorts of different offense lineups and stuff, but she does get the chance to play 6 rotations quite a bit, and she sets and she hits. She plays defense in different spots. And when you look at a setter that does all of that, that's a player that you're okay, because she's been a hitter, she's going to be a better setter. Talk to any setter that has ever been a hitter before. Being a hitter makes you a better setter, no questions asked. So I think that is definitely a pro in that column. Not a ton of colleges are running 6'2", and I don't think she's going anywhere to go be a hitter and a setter. If they did anything like that, she would – I haven't seen somebody – Rachel Fairbanks did that at Pittsburgh maybe 2-3 years ago. I haven't seen anybody do that in a very long time at a really high level and a really strong college team. So I can't imagine that Bryn will go somewhere to do set and hit. But because she's been a hitter, she'll be a stronger setter. And I think college coaches acknowledge that and they see that. If she was only playing 3 rotations and not getting to hit at all, I think that would be one thing that they'd be bummed about. A college would be dang, I wish we could see you play more. I would love to see you run a 5'1" or run the show because that's what we want you to do. But I don't think it's something, because she's as talented as she is, I don't think it's something that's going to deter a coach from wanting to pick her up.
Okay. Z, first of all, when you get that for a nickname, come on. Winning. You got it made with us. So Z, that Club V team is scrappy. They're fun to watch. They overachieve. But what do you think of her?
I was doing what I do and just searching her club team, and I was looking and I'm just watching and I'm like going through highlights and just bouncing through player. And I'm like, who is this setter? Like, she's really good. Who is this setter? I didn't put two and two together that she was who she was. I had watched her film before, but I just was honed in on her. And I was actually looking for hitters at that point when I was watching. So I was like, who is this setter all of a sudden? She stood out. And I think that that's the biggest point that I make about her is that I'm looking for hitters, and what's standing out to me is the setter. She is a player that stands out in a group like the one that she's in. Her team is scrappy. I think that's a great way to say it about them. They grind and they go make plays and they keep balls off the floor. And then she puts balls in hittable spots. That's why they're successful, and that's why they're in the position that they're in, going to Triple Crown and being in the power pools, because they go attack balls, because she just puts it up and they find ways to keep balls off the floor, and she puts them in hittable spots that she shouldn't be able to do. Like, it's really impressive. And I think that's why she stands out, because it doesn't look like she should be able to do it, and she does.
Yeah. And one more before we go, we talked about Mallory a second, but you have to, I guess you probably didn't see her a lot the past 2 years, but when you watched her last year playing with the 17s, and now she comes back and she's playing literally back 2 age groups. Mm-hmm. It's almost like she's like the den mother for the Girl Scouts, and she's like she should be running the team, the mother for the team, and it's crazy. And she's healthy again and playing. With her, she just has the calmest demeanor out there, like she is another coach. I just try and gauge her level. Right? Like, what is her level at the next level? Seeing her healthy finally. And with her PPV, if we have that right, because we just haven't seen her healthy for a long time.
Right.
Because she's so calm and she's such a gym rat and high IQ.
Yeah. No, I mean, she comes from a volleyball family too. So like, she's just been around the game for so long. And like you said, playing up, I think we've seen a couple players that have played up, and it only benefits you. She's coming back down at the perfect time. I think that I could do a whole segment on playing up and when you need to play your age group, and she could not be playing her age group at a better time. She's doing that strategically because she comes from a volleyball family and they know. So props to everyone giving her advice. I'm happy to see her in this age division for this year, because it's a big year for the 2027s and for her specifically. So she's gained a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge playing up. I mean, that's hard to do, to be that young playing up 2 years. I mean, she was in middle school, and those girls are already in high school potentially, like when she was doing all of that, playing up with those people. So that's really hard to do. And there's a big maturity age gap and that kind of stuff. And so she definitely closed that for herself, playing up for as long as she has been. She's been doing it basically her entire career in clubs. So she's got a lot of experience, and that is only going to help her. And I think that's only going to help her to navigate this, like coming back and trying to be at the top of her game right now and try and get recruited, all while still trying to be as healthy as she can be.
Yeah, when you talk about coaches' kids, I think, well, you know, for sure with Marley, Mallory, Ellery, Anya Baglenko, we talked about her earlier, moving from California to Texas, and then she played on that powerhouse prep team with Kari Spears and Preston Wood in the fall, where she played DS. But I'm interested to watch her fundamentally sound, seeing how much stronger she's gotten, but really impressive at nationals when she lived in California. So seeing how that whole transition's gone, talking about her. But so you talk about literally some court generals who've grown up in the gym. You have some coaches on the floor with this group. So I think we went over our allotted time there. Let's go to this. We take a break from the positions a little bit. Programs with smoke. And we talked about this a little bit. Yes, we've left out some programs on purpose. These are some programs that come into the off season with a little extra momentum. Maybe it's from the season, maybe it's from a hire, whatever. But just as we talk with some prospects, some names that we're hearing more than maybe we haven't, or for prospect profiles that are talking about camps. Number one right now, and easily, is Kansas. And with Matt, and he has been awesome to us, but that is the home run hire right now. And I haven't seen the post, but hey, I love the announcement edit that they put out for the Rock Chalk yesterday. I haven't seen who it was, but another signing yesterday.
I saw that too.
I didn't see if it was an Oregon kid that came or what, but Kansas right now is the popular one. And did you notice how many times the comment, they made a serious commitment to volleyball? How many times he said that on the podcast?
Yeah, it's one of those decisions that universities are starting to have to decide if they're going to make or not. And it's cool to see that a lot of them are choosing to, and Kansas definitely did with the hire of Matt Ulmer.
Right. Do you think that meant anything the other way?
100%. It 100% does.
Right. And you're starting to see the haves and the have-nots much, much more. And me, for one, I mean, I think for years, coaches have to bite their tongue for fear of maybe losing their job or whatever. But I mean, I think you're seeing it start to come out, the programs that aren't supportive and the ones that are. And as more money becomes involved, it's okay to speak out. It's the only way you're going to get anything. And you still might not, but then if you're a better coach, you leave for better things. And that's the only way you're going to get changes. A lot of ways, right? Like, for sure, you got to lose something. And then you either have a fan base that steps up or you don't. And then you fall deeper and farther behind, right? I mean, correct? Or
yeah, no, I have no comments. You're exactly right.
You never do. And then you let me take and the phone.
I mean, I agreed with you on I'll straight up say it. Like, I have had friends and teammates that have played at Oregon, and the buy-in for volleyball and like the push there for like strong get volleyball on the map is not where it needs to be for a program that could be and is really as highly touted and as ranked as their program is. Oregon volleyball, they need more buy-in from their university.
Yeah. Well, and we're not just saying about them. We spoke out against other programs, especially in the down south, and
for sure,
ones that have won really big titles before don't support their programs. But you're starting to see the haves and have not, and that is the most program of the most excitement. And in the heartland and the Kansas City area has some great volleyball. And he also talked about on the podcast the connection to how centrally located they are, how easy it is to get to so many other hotbeds in a very short period of time to recruit.
For sure.
And like I said, we only talk the truth. He has been nothing but generous with his time. He literally had 25 free minutes before 7:00 that day, and he gave them to me, and then he had to go sign 2 recruits. So I appreciate him. Next one, Michigan State, big financial support with the Magic Band, threw in some cash to make volleyball a little more prevalent, NIL, and then Kristen Kelsey with the big coming back to her alma mater. Somebody we thought would be a great head coach, and going back to where she got her coaching career started, correct? right?
I believe so. Yeah.
And played, and going back, and the USA volleyball ties, and just
Overall
energetic and relationship builder. And you would think that's, from a recruiting standpoint and work ethic standpoint, that should be a home run for them. And now it looks like financially they're made a big push. Facilities, they're definitely above average facilities, I think. And
they've been trying to create a push for women's volleyball. That's a big school. That's a really good example of a school that's buying in on women's volleyball. And I think the end of Kathy George's career, Kathy George was pushing for it. Leah Johnson, while she was there, she did nothing but push for women's volleyball to be at the forefront. And she really got the ball rolling with the administration. I think Leah Johnson did a lot of that. And now Kristen Kelsey is able to just kind of walk right in and continue that push in that fight. And I think it's a really good opportunity. 3 really strong women that pushed for volleyball to be at the top of its game at Michigan State. And maybe not the first 2 couldn't really do it with the recruits that they had. They were trying really hard and building. And I think this hire with Kristen Kelsey and the funding that this program's going to get and the opportunity to play in the Jennings Center is incredible. It's really taking off. Michigan State volleyball is going to be back where it was a couple of years ago, no doubt.
Michigan's got some decent volleyball at the club level.
For sure.
Right? Yep. Utah we put in there because they had made, we look back at our rankings and our PPV, their averages have had some decent classes and some top end recruits, and they've made some runs, a decent run again this year in the tournament. And when we see a lot of the West Coast kids, their player profiles, just a lot of them putting down Utah as far as schools of interest. And so a school on the West Coast, and I just think, again, it's kind of that Matt Ulmer effect. I think that with Ulmer out of Oregon, that gives some other people chances at the recruits maybe in the West Coast that normally might have been Oregon. We see UCLA that we're going to talk about in a second, and Utah is just a very solid program that wins every year and has been solid for a couple seasons now.
Yep.
Right. And there is no better time to be recruiting on the West Coast than the 2027 class.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And you want to speak of a program that is on a roll recruiting, whether you talk about them or not, but BYU, their 25 class, 2 Under Armour All-Americans. Sully Davis just happened to be MVP, and they just coming off a great season a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And again, Utah, okay, and in that area, and putting together talent of a very solid class 25, a solid class with 26, not deep, but solid numbers with the kids that they've had.
Yeah, they're due for an up year. And I think that this really could be it. Maybe if not this year, maybe the following year, because their 25s will have a year under their belt. Maybe 2026 will be their year, but it's coming. I mean, BYU, we played them a couple times in preseason tournaments when I was playing, and they always gave us a run for their money. They're a tough team, and I think Coach Olmstead is a talented coach, and she does a great job creating a group that really wants to play for her. So I think she'll have no issues with that 2025 class.
Well, and I just think all the talent in Arizona, right? There's just so much talent in Arizona, which is a regional spot for them. It just looks like this could be a year with the talent they had in the 2025 class, just a hunch. But if you see some of the player profiles, they do tend to be listed a little bit. Vanderbilt, right? They actually have the product. We've talked about them a lot. They're coming off. Really, you may look at the numbers and be like, well, they're not top 10. They are top 10 actually in their very first recruiting class, which is amazing for not having a team on the floor.
Crazy.
And they've got some transfers, which again is amazing for not having a team on the floor, and their transfer requirements are different than a lot of schools. Now they have a team on the floor to show schools. We've talked about Nashville. We've talked about their young staff. That's what they're made to do, is recruit. So I just think that now that they have a product, and I think they have a pretty decent NIL base, from the sounds of things, I think they're going to continue the momentum, and that will get an even hotter place to recruit to. It's just our gut feeling. We'll see if that continues, but I don't think they lose momentum now that they actually have a product to show.
For sure.
Right? It's Nashville.
For sure. It's Nashville. I got it on my calendar. Like, I think it's August 26th is their home opener. I'm like, how can I work my way into getting there for that?
You go to
Broadway?
You go to Broadway. I'll go to the Grand Ole Opry.
Perfect. We'll meet at the match.
There we go. All right. Creighton, we'll see. They did what they did. At their big win, Elite Eight, couple points from the Final Four. They had their huge season. Great transfer portal, right? They reloaded. They're that program on the map, right? See if that continues into another successful season, and they just keep rolling, right? It just seems like a program that is here to stay now, and continued excellence of what they put together for years in a row. UCLA, again, second year in the Big Ten. They're competing with USC. They've had better classes, some success in the portal, and again, maybe taking advantage of a year or two rebuild with Oregon, and advantage of a great year in the West Coast, right? And then Ole Miss, I don't know why, it was just me, but I felt like with the tournament run and a little bit that they had in the SEC, it just feels like a program on the uptick to me.
Okay.
And the
I
SEC,
like that call. I agree. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I have like facts to back that up or if it's just a feel.
Yeah, that's my gut, and I know as I do that. So those are the programs with a little bit of extra smoke hopping in to this season as we head on, and we'll keep going. Let's go now to our middle blockers. Skip through this class, maybe not as much depth, but some top end talent, especially in the big three. And give us a quick overview of the top end of the middle blockers.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is a group of middle blockers that I don't know the most about. I don't know the least about, but I don't know a ton about this group because I think they're all still growing, and this is going to be a big breakout year for them. I think the traction is drawn a lot to the outside hitters and the setters in this class. So the middles are going to benefit from having strong outside hitters on their team. But the top of the top, some of those really talented middles are the ones that are going to stand out, like AVC's Williams. It's one of those I don't have all of the names memorized, but it's one that I have in my head because she's a middle that I think stands out on her team alone. I don't think she needs a ton of people around her to draw in attention. She's actually drawing in the attention for her team. So there's a couple of them on this list that are like that, but I think she's the one that stands out to me, especially just Ohio girl. I watch a lot of Ohio volleyball just because I'm born and raised there. So I keep my eye on the clubs around my stomping grounds, and she's one that definitely has stood out to me. But the whole group is a talented group, and like I said, the top of the top are definitely standing out, and the rest of them are still going to get noticed and are drawing traction to their teams just in other ways for sure.
Yeah, and I think obviously the top is Kendall Omiuri, Arizona Storm, and you're talking about somebody who, as you know, there's been talks of a possible Olympian someday, right? At the top end of her talent, and somebody who will be, looked at by the best programs in the country. And then the next you have this cluster between Carson and Nyla Livings and Kyla and Taylor that are all bunched together. I will tell you that I have been really impressed with Taylor Harrington's, I think, maturity over the last year. The work she's put into her game, and I'll let you address that more, but just her maturity in handling things like the interviews, in how she's learned to like compliment other people, things, little things like that a year ago. And remember, a year ago, they were 15, right? There should be maturity.
Yeah.
Between their 16 year, but I've really been impressed with Taylor in that way. And just watching her at some of the select events and watching her interact with some of these other athletes. And even one of our other player profiles who's brand new to her Paramount team has talked about Taylor has helped her. She's a member of Straight Talk Recruiting, right? Taylor's doing all of those little things to make sure she sets herself up for the best experience. She's doing a lot of little things that I don't think a year ago a kid like that does. And she's putting that work. So it's been impressive to see her kind of grow up in that way. Kyla Williams, I'll tell you, one of the prospect evaluators said, I love this. They said, Kyla Williams is that kid who won't say a word, and she'll just train and train and train with all the talkers, and she'll just kind of hang out. And all the talkers will keep talking. And then when they get to college, Kyla will just pass all of them and have twice the career, and still won't say a word. Like, we'll just be there, and she'll just outwork everybody.
Yep.
And just outwork everybody. And then when it counts, she'll do way more than everybody that's getting talked about like now. But when it matters, she'll just pass everybody up.
For sure.
And when we've talked to her, we've watched her, right? Like that's kind of how she seems. Very serious, very locked in, like works her rear end off. When seen her one-on-one, like she has that game face all the time and is going to be a very solid college player. I'll let you talk about the technique stuff, but when I watch the intangibles, that's what I see: a very locked in, very dedicated, very hardworking athlete.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think all of that goes to show just how strong of a player she is. Like you don't become as good of a player as she is not working hard at all. And I think the fact that if you ask anybody about her, that's what they're going to say. That's only going to help her when it comes time to pick a school to go to. But I mean, I think the first things that are going to help her is how high she reaches and how quick she is off the ground. She's up and in transition. That's one of the biggest things I think I've noticed about her is she stands out in that sense. Like she's up every single time, no questions asked. So her setter can find her. I interviewed her setter and her setter was like, oh yeah, I just throw the ball up and she bounces it every time. So she's up all the time. And that's one of the things that not every middle is. And even once you get to college, not every middle is up. And that's one of the biggest things. If you can be up every single time in transition at this level, you're going to surpass middles in college every single day because you are just up and available. So she does that really well. I mean, I think going back to Taylor Harrington, like you were talking about, I was watching some film of her and she was another one that I was watching and I wasn't looking for middles. I was looking for outsides, but I was just scrolling through film and a couple of her like bounces got mixed in because she hits a 31 or a gap ball so well. And it's her setter kind of just loops it right up. It's usually a little bit of a faster set in like once the game speeds up, it'll get a little bit faster. But right now, especially, she jumps so high that she is over top of every single blocker that is in her face. And she just bounces the ball. Like she's over top of the block, sees the ball, is so open to her setter, and then she's able to just bounce balls in front of people's faces. So I think that will take her pretty far. And I think she'll have no issue speeding up to the game once it gets faster because she's already so quick off the floor. Her speed is definitely not going to be an issue. But then, like you said, too, that bunch that's all together, Carson, Nyla, Kyla, Taylor, the four of them, any given day could be up and down with each other because they're all so talented and they're all very similar in the sense that like they're up, available, and they jump really high and they're quick off the ground. They're quick off the ground and they have a quick arm swing. None of them are hitting like super fast zero tempo balls right now, which I think they'll be able to develop into once they get to college because they're doing so much fast work off the ground. They're fast off the ground. They don't have to hit fast in transition. They'll develop that when it comes time, but they're all doing a really good job of being over top of blockers and seeing everything so well that they're making impacts all over the place. And college coaches are definitely going to notice their speed.
Yeah, then we'll talk about Ackerman in a second, but the Revolution middles with Sheehy and Lambert, very versatile middles who can do many different things, and as far as their movement on the court, get a lot done. I'm really interested to watch that team more. I got to see them a little bit at nationals, and the little I watched was impressed with that entire team. You want to talk about a deep team, but Sheehy especially, I can see there being some movement in this list as well. But again, not the deepest of middles, but that Revolution team may be one that gets overshadowed a little bit in the Phoenix area, but a couple of talented middles there as well.
Yeah, I think talent, like you said, versatility is in their favor. And because they've got such a deep team, they need to be versatile because they might have to throw them on the right side or make them play rotations in the middle and the right side sort of thing. So I've seen them do kind of all sorts of different things. So they're being utilized in different ways. And again, that's another thing that's just going to help them down the road. Like I said, anytime that you get more experience doing something that you're not comfortable with or doing something that's a little bit different than what your position does normally, you're going to grow and become a better volleyball player at the end of the day.
So a class that we've talked about, this list will grow immensely, probably after this weekend starting. There are not many names. We admittedly don't know the middle position as well as the others. And last time I checked, most Power 4 programs and D1 programs still need middles. So they're looking for more names. There's going to be more names added, and interested to see how this shakes out. There will be movement at the top because there's still some questions in that middle position for sure. And it really hasn't shaken out. Even at the top, I know there's a lot of questions in that position, maybe a lot more so than in the 2026 class. So with that, and with that, we bring on something that new for us this year, and this is more of a B segment. Mac likes this as well, but this is, we call our dog squad every week, or every other week, or there might be one member. You might just get dog points, but this came about as we just talked with some coaches, and really it came down to last year after somebody got done signing their class, and I said that, like, hey, what did it come down to when you signed, I don't know, some position? And why did you go with, why did you go with so-and-so? And they said, at the end of the day, we watched her at tournaments, and we watched her at, the Under Armour, and we watched her at NTDP, and we watched her at all these things. And she just kept stepping up to the front of the line, and if she messed up, she didn't care, it didn't faze her, and she wasn't embarrassed, and she didn't push somebody in front of her to go first, and she wasn't scared to make mistakes. And if some doorknob messaged her and said, hey, make some video you've never made before and look like an idiot, right? Like, she'd do that stuff, right? And she just had that dog in her, right? And DAWG, dog, like, and when you play at our level, you're playing in front of 14,000 people a night. Everywhere you go, it's going to be sold out, right? And we don't need really nice kids every night. Sometimes you just got to have a little bit of dog in you, and I don't know if you can coach that. Right? And so, Mac, maybe you can attest to that. Like, a dog is you just have it. It's just something that is, and it's not always nasty. It's
No.
just.
Honestly, I think Wesley embodies that. Like, I think that's the easiest one to throw out there.
Whoa. Now you might be insulting the head dog, the alpha.
Who?
Hua is the alpha right now.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Hua,
yeah,
the Libero from the Storm, is the top dog.
You think that's who you have right now?
That's who we have in the clubhouse right now.
I mean, I think.
But you're right. Wesley would be on.
I guess I've worked more closely with Wesley than.
I am not going to lie. Wesley is on the team. She's on the team.
She's right there. But I do think I agree with what you said about, like, it's intangible. I don't know if you can coach it, because it's one of those things you either got it or you don't. And it's like kind of one of those things that if I think about it in my position, it's like, are you going to throw your shoulders back and do what the team needs, or are you going to like go a different direction? And that might look a bunch of different ways, but like doing what the team needs, and that might not be like on the court. That might be on the sideline being the best cheerleader. That might be on the sideline going to fill up your teammates' water bottles because they don't have the time to. That might be going to get a bag of ice because your teammate just sprained her ankle. Like, there's different things that looks like, and it's something that people notice. And I talked a little bit about this, or I'm going to talk a little bit about this on my morning coffee with Mac tomorrow, about the things that people notice at big tournaments like that you might not realize that go into making you that dog and having that dog in you.
Yeah, and the other thing, like we talked about with that I talked about earlier with Hua, was when you play on a team of stars, who is the one person that can go up to the star when they're struggling and say, hey, who does the star listen to when they're struggling? And on their team, it's Hua, right? So that's the ultimate sign of kind of leadership, is the one who can go to the star. Now, with Wesley, what we talked about when I saw her in a group of ultimate things, like an Under Armour or whatever, she was just like a magnet. Like, she didn't have to go to a drill and go up to people. Like, people came to her. Right? And that's the sign of the dog. Like, people came to her at the start of a drill wanting to be on her team. She just went to her spot and was like the magnet that people were attracted to. That's an air of confidence. Now, the energy that she plays with and she brings is amazing.
For sure.
Now, number 7 there in the black, most people probably don't know her, but to me, that's Maddie Jo Henry from Kairos in South Dakota. To me, she has the ultimate game face. And to me, it doesn't matter who she's playing she looks like she may rip your face off. When you're playing, she scares me when she's playing, and it's game on all the time. There is no half speed points. Down 15, up 15, every point matters, right? And I don't know why I got deleted. My last person on this team was Cynthia Ackerman from Legacy. And the reason she was on this team is if you don't know her story, you got to learn it. Cancer survivor, like the most amazing attitude, no excuses, works harder than anybody. If you wanted somebody who could be a woe is me, feel sorry for me, it would be her. And if you just talk to her for 5 minutes, she is that cheerleader. She is that, oh, I need to work on this because my feet aren't so good, so I have to overcome it by doing this. And like, well, the reason her feet aren't so good is because of everything that's happened before, right? Well,
right.
She doesn't care. She just
moves forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a world of excuses and complaints and right, like there's literally days where I have bad days because of stuff with this job where I feel like talking to her because she would put you in a better mood, right? Like she's that person, and that to me is a form of the dog, right? Like just that in such a positive way, like that makes a program better in all ways. And then that's Marley Smith, where what's the urban legend got up to? Her leg was almost falling off or whatever, and she won the championship. Severely sprained ankle, still played. Just, I mean, she's a gamer. She's a gamer, and she's old school and make excuses. She goes out and does the best she can. And one of the few kids, we said, hey, maybe go to some bigger camps next year, right? So anyways, the dog is just the dog. If you have the dog in you, that's a great thing. And Mac talks about it. She's very humble, but I have to witness her. She does all of those things. She practices it, and she is a dog herself. She's actually a lot taller too than you would think. So it's good. So you want to be on the dog squad. It's like you're a grinder. You do the little things. I don't know. You just have it. So that's new this year, and that's our preseason. Dog squad. So all right, let's get on with our opposites, and then we'll move on. We talked about this group a little bit as we mixed them in. Let's go through these guys quick, and move on. Go through our opposites really quick.
Opposites, again, a group that could be outsides at some point in their career, but opposite is one of those positions that is becoming way more important. I think the opposite position has developed a little bit over time, and now we're seeing a lot more of them in the back row, playing 6 rotations, which is huge. I would like to see more and more people playing 6 rotations on the right side in the back row, especially because that creates a back row attack. So these are a lot of really talented right sides that are, a lot of them are playing those 6 rotations, and some of them will end up potentially even playing outside when they get to college.
Yeah. And so Caroline Ward played up a year. You talked about that with that Boiler Juniors team that she's played with, very dominant, had kind of recognized her at the Under Armour camp in Indy last year, and really stood out participating with an older group, really reserved off the court, plays a lot of intensity on the court. But then Aspen Brown really has kind of come onto the radar late. Very physical, taller, opposite, that be interesting to watch. And we really got to look at her only in the last probably 2 months. So she's come on late, impressive. And then Najari Cooks, we've talked about Najari out of North Carolina, a setter, going back and forth. Somebody said, hey, you might want to look at opposite. and then she made the big switch, and I think that really helped her recruiting take off, and a lot more potential, I think, at the college level as an opposite, but extremely bouncy, extremely athletic as an opposite hitter.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with everything you've said so far. I think Aspen Brown is the one that stands out to me the most. I mean, I know she's at the top of our list, but I could really see her reaching up like even higher with her PPV as we go through this season. Watching her just a little bit, I think I was looking for, she plays with Tinsley Brown.
Mm-hmm.
She's in Houston. And I was looking at Tinsley's film, and I was breaking her film down, I think in an interview with her. And I was just like, I am watching you, but all I can watch is your right side because you guys have such good chemistry. She attacks so well, and you move her around and she's all over the court. She attacks from everywhere. And Tinsley was like, yeah, well, we've played together for like 5 or 6 years now, so we better have good chemistry. And I was like, okay, fair, yes. But also like, wow, she's a talented player. She's just so strong, and so strong from the back row. And that was something that stood out to me so much because I don't know many right sides that can do what Aspen can do from the back row. So I think she is going to be that's going to carry her success through college no matter what. And if she's not already on coaches' boards, she absolutely will be after Triple Crown this coming weekend.
Another one's this Olivia Greenwood from Wave. That's another one. Maybe a little bit, probably needs to get stronger for the next level, but she's going to get looked at a lot of eyes on her team, on her court. I actually noticed her during the prep season. So interesting to see how she does during this club season. And then Maddie Connor has come on. I think that's a score that goes up. Maddie, we apologize again for messing up your video earlier and daring to call you an outside. Maddie on the upper northwest part of the country, and then Sophia Smith, new another one in the legacy, that legacy crew that'll have a lot of eyes on her and that deep team. For the opposites, but as a whole and as a group, the opposites a position looking for some depth and looking for probably a little more top end depth and talent for some of the bigger programs step up, and whether that's outsides getting transitioned over or some true opposites stepping up their game this year remains to be seen. So we'll talk more about that as we catch up now and we move on to the Liberos, a position that's a little bit deeper this year, and want to spend a little time on this crew that has some higher end talent. So with this crew, as we jump in, let's just go to the top 10 right now and talk about specifically, we'll spend a little bit more time. Our top 3, we'll talk about them more in depth when we do our comparison. Talk about Caitlin Herwig, if you've watched her at all yet, from SCBC.
Yeah, I have. Defensively, I think she's really strong. I feel like I see more of the defensive side of all of these Liberos. And like you said, this is a really deep class. But I think defensively, she is where it's at. She moves really well and she reads really, really well. I always have the toughest time scouting out or trying to find Liberos that have really good, strong talent, because I think there's so many people can make one dig look really good, but it's hard to continually make plays, like constantly just go throw your body around and make plays. And I think on this list, there's a lot of them that do that, but Caitlin does a really good job of it. She's moving in the back row. Tips don't stand a chance. I think the top 4 of those honestly, most of this group, tips don't stand a chance on these guys. So they're running through things, and all of them would make strong college Liberos. I think these are girls that potentially, and if they play their cards right and end up at the right place, they're all going to spend time in a Libero jersey, depending on where they go to school.
As we keep going down that list, and we talk about, I'm interested more so, obviously, in Ella Horbeck, but that OTVA team in general. We've had 4 or 5 fill out player profiles that we're curious about, but Ella and then her team a little bit as a whole.
Yeah. No, Ella's one that I have been watching quite a bit of. Like on this list, I was looking for the names that stand out the most, and Ella's is definitely one that I've probably watched the most of. Her as an individual, I actually have watched a decent amount of her serve receive game, and I think she's a really strong serve receiver. And one thing that she does really well is she runs the backcourt. She is in control of the serve receive group. She's got everybody moving in the right direction. That OT team is really disciplined. They move really well together. So she's kind of the ringleader of all of that, which is hard to do. And that shows a lot of leadership coming from her. But then on the defensive side too, I think she reads well. She makes good plays continually. She's constantly digging hard driven balls, and not ones that are just at her. I think that's another side of Liberos that I think, like, who can't dig a hard driven ball that's right at you? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people, but like hard driven ball right at you, the logistics of it are pretty simple. But a ball that it's hard driven that you have to take a step for, or maybe make a dive move for. And those are much harder to get up and get anywhere in the playable area. And she does a good job of that still. So she's really talented. But then her team as a whole is a team of a bunch of really decent, solid girls. I think all of them are at a very similar level, and I think they all balance each other out really well. They do a good job of I don't feel like there's one game where it's like, oh, this girl was all the way up here and the rest of the team was just down here. I feel like the entire match, watching that team play, they're all really balancing each other out. And it's hard to play against a team that's like that, because who do you stop? Who do you block? Who do you spend more time focused on? Who do you worry about defending against if they're all kind of doing everything at the same time? So it's a really well-rounded team, and Ella does a good job of keeping the backcourt really controlled.
And then Audrey Schaefer is another one, play with Rockwood Thunder, that we've watched a little bit. I've enjoyed her, also just her coverage, the area that she covers on the court. But I think she's another one that's going to benefit just from the eyes on the court, right? With so many of these, doesn't matter so much what we think. Well, more so what you think, right? Doesn't matter what we score them at. They're going to get their opportunities because they're going to get the coaches on their court.
For sure. That's the libero position in a nutshell, honestly. I mean, liberos are the last to commit usually. So all of these players, like, it's never too late for a libero because they're the last ones to go generally. And it's because everyone wants their big swings, but I mean, everybody knows defense wins championships. So you got to have somebody in the backcourt leading the way. And these players will find their places and make impacts in college volleyball for sure.
And another one too, we'll touch on, but Kat Nygaard is one who's been excellent with her player profile and communicating with us, and somebody who is making the drive from Tennessee to Georgia with a new club this year for, more exposure at a bigger club, but not going to Kansas City this weekend, but interesting to watch her this year playing at a bigger club. And one of our questions coming up about exactly that as we go. And then Ainsley Schaefer, who we just haven't watched much of the TAV team yet, but liberos and recruiting liberos is just a different world. And kind of feel bad when you talk with parents of bros, because you kind of have the big dogs, and it's determining what those are, right? There's usually a few that are national,
mm-hmm.
and then the rest kind of seem to go regional.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a few that go early, and then some go later and then some go really late.
Yep.
Right? And then the money, and I know we're not supposed to say that, right? But then that's all different, and scholarships are different, and it's just it's just different.
No, yeah. I mean, in my day, it was Libero. If you had a 4-year Libero on your team, if you had a Libero on your team that was a 4-year scholarship kid, they better be a dang good Libero.
Right. Yeah. And so when you're talking with parents, bros, it's difficult, because I can see why that's frustrating, because there is really no right answer. And they're all probably getting something different, and it really depends. And what's good in what class may depend on that class, right? Mm-hmm. And the difference between good and great could be very, very, very narrow. And what's to say, like, hey, this class, there might be 4 that are national, and, you know, is the best team on the West Coast going to make sure Caitlin stays home, or is a national power going to go for Caitlin? Or are they going to say Cora's staying home, or are we way off and Layla Chadwick's the one that's national, and you know, and or is that a regional one and they wait later? And there's really no telling. Recruiting with bros is so year to year, and it really is program to program. But we will take you through, and we will show you a couple of them, and a couple of those top 3. And so here's Cora and Hua out of Arizona Storm, and Gemma Hopkins from Texas, and just a little bit of that sass that we talked about from them. So to know all of them, and then to ask them to be serious, or to be funny when they are serious, makes us laugh when you know them, and then to be their alter ego a little bit is funny. But talking about those 3 a little bit, and I talked with both Hua and Gemma from Hua Lycona specifically, and we talked with somebody from, I think, USA Volleyball maybe, and they said, hey, we needed to get her away from her club team to see how good she really was, because her club team is so loaded. She was never put in bad situations to be isolated. So we never truly saw how good she was, because she was never put in a bad spot.
Yeah. I actually was just about to compliment her on one of the things I noticed when, like, my OG first started looking up players and I was diving in on the 2027s. She was one of the ones I finally came across that had film of plays that were a little bit imperfect. I said that a bunch to everyone. Like, I remember putting out like a PSA, like, I'm so tired of watching like your perfect balls. Stop doing that. And she had ones that, like, she's making like this diving save into the stands, and like, it doesn't look great. It's not the most pretty ball, but hey, it's up, and she put in a lot of effort to make it go there. So I think that's one of the like nods that I have to her, is that her film isn't pretty and perfect, but it shows her grit, it shows her drive, and it shows her range and capability. Like, it does show a lot. It shows a lot more than watching her dig a ball that's like straight at her. I said it earlier, anybody can do that. Maybe not anybody, but it doesn't take as much to do that as it does to make those crazy diving plays. And if those crazy diving plays were perfect, and she was making that like a perfect play every single time, she would already be in college. We'd figure out how to expedite her education and get her at the highest level possible. So, like, the fact that those balls are up and in playable zones, that's all we can ask for. So she's doing a really good job of that.
And I think it shows something about her confidence in her game, that she puts those things on film and doesn't worry about a perfect highlight film.
100%. I think too many people are so worried about, oh, what are they going to think of this? It's not like exactly the greatest. I'm guilty of it too. Somebody asked me to put together a film reel and I was like, oh, but I did this in there. I'm like, but it's not that bad. We still made it playable and hey, my team won the point. At the end of the day, what I personally think that most coaches want to see is if you can find a way to win. If you can find a way to win, you're going to go far. And if you can put film out there that shows you finding a way to win, that's better than half the kids right now.
Well, and another thing is somebody actually did one of our videos. They have a player profile and we've emailed them a couple times now over a couple months. Mm-hmm. And we said, hey, would you please, if you would send us your 3-step approach, it would help us get a better idea for your PPV. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, it's not that great right now. I don't want to put that down. Well, the first thing, if a college coach looks at that and they see that you didn't put it down, what's the first thing a college coach is going to look at and think?
Oh, it's not that good. They didn't want to share it.
Yeah.
Yep.
As opposed to somebody else that had a video, they literally put that down and they said, I promise you I will be at the Magic 120 inches before nationals. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, hey, I know I'm not there, but I will be there when it counts. Right? Like, I'm not fooling you.
Yeah.
Right? And the other thing is, don't lie on your numbers. The coaches are going to find out sometime. Right? You know, like, you're not fooling them. That's what I mean. Like, we talk about rankings. Like, they don't care about the rankings. They're much better at evaluating the talent than anybody doing rankings. You're not fooling them, right? Like, that's what I mean is you're only hurting yourself. These guys they get paid to evaluate talent, right? Mm-hmm. So just put it out there. They're going to find out at some point anyways. You're prolonging the inevitable. Put it out there. Find out what lane you're in, accept it, maximize it, and go with it, right? Like, and that's what HUA does. Now, let's talk about somebody, Cora. I don't know how to say this without I don't get in trouble, but like different, not resume. I don't know how to say it, but not talked about as much. I don't know, but you've watched her film. I think a lot of her as talk about her game.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's a quick, ready to go player. She reads really well. She stands down the line with her. She's very neutral. Like, by that, I mean, she's not blocked in. She's not like running forward, crashing in every single time. She's very neutral. She's down and low and ready to play. And then she makes a play. She's very like calm, cool, and collected. She's not in a rush to be anywhere. Like sometimes the chaotic libero works for some people, like that really does. And like sometimes that's the player that people want. But I think what she does really well is she's back on the line. She waits. Once she sees the ball, then she releases and goes. And she's really fast. She also looks, I don't actually know how tall she is, but she does look to be a little bit taller and like a little bit lankier than some of the liberos, which I think is a huge nod to her. I think that's a big check in the pros column because I think we're trending in that direction. Liberos are going to start getting a little bit taller here soon just because it helps with the range. It helps with the quickness. It helps with the explosiveness. If you're already halfway there just by standing up and moving forward, hey, why not play libero? So, and she seems to fit that mold. Maybe she's just really fast and I don't know how tall she is, but yeah, she does a great job of being calm and then going to see the play, reacting. She reacts really well.
And then the debate that might be the best of all, talk about Gemma Hopkins.
She's really talented. I mean, I've watched quite a bit of her film, and I think she's also very calm and reads really well. but at the same time, she's small and she's fast and she's gritty and she leads that backcourt. I think she reminds me a lot of my libero in college, Kylie Murr, who was scrappy and would fight for anybody, and she was gonna fight to get that ball up. And she plays really well with her team. Like, Gemma does a good job of knowing who's next to her and maybe like having to go and play the ball in front of her off blocker because she knows her off blocker is not going to play that. Or maybe having to compensate a little bit with her passing and taking balls from her outside hitters who maybe one is not passing well that day. So it looks like she reads really well, but she covers her side of the court better than most people do, and she does a good job of knowing the people that she's around. So I think that's another leadership skill too, is just knowing who she's around and being able to help everybody out because maybe they're not strong in that suit.
Good. All right, so one thing we do, and we're going to go through this the other thing that Mac and I run is a little thing called Straight Talk Recruiting, and we started this year, and it's going really well. It's just a lot of common questions that we get from parents or common mistakes that we see people making in the recruiting process or misnomers. And so we put together a little fact or fiction. And so we're going to go through, and Mac and I are going to answer these as our Straight Talk staff would. And so these are fact or fiction, things that we hear about recruiting. All right. And so Matt started off, the amount that you play matters and affects your recruiting.
Fact or fiction? This is one where I go, does it affect your recruiting? Yes, I think it does affect your recruiting. Is it the end of the world? No, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think the amount you play can affect your recruiting in a sense that if you are on the bench and you're pouting and you don't be a good teammate and you are impacting your team negatively, that's going to impact your recruiting and you're probably not going to find a place. But if you're on the bench and you're cheering everybody on and you're doing everything right, that's helpful. And you know what? At some point you're going to get in, and that film that you get from the minutes that you get on that court are going to push you and give you the opportunity to get your name out there. And being on a court with players like we talk about all the time, being on a court with players that are potentially better than you and are bringing eyes to your court is going to benefit you in some way, shape, or form. So yes and no is my long answer for that.
I'm going to say fiction, and this is where we'll use that Metro team of last year, and specifically our gal, Bria Bro, and you just happen to have maybe the best opposite in the country on your same team, and Bria touches 10'8", so any coach knew she was a Division I player as well. She just happened to have somebody better in front of her. It wasn't that she was bad. Coaches know, it's their job to know. They will find out. They're also in your gyms watching practice. So you show up, you do your job. It's their job to find you. Just because you're not playing as much, they will find you if you're good enough. All right? That's my answer to parents who say, oh, she's only playing one set, or she should be playing more. Or, if you're good enough, I think coaches find you.
That's true. That is true. If you're good
enough. What happens if you're not good enough?
Yeah. Then
they don't find you, but it's not because you don't play.
Right. I mean, and that's where I go, like, playing time. If you're good enough, you're gonna have the playing time.
Right.
So it shouldn't matter.
Okay, here's another one. We get this a lot. She plays this position in high school, but they have her playing a different position in high school. Does the position that you play matter?
No, not in any way, shape, or form. No. It makes you a better player, I think, to play more positions. I played outside hitter, middle, and right side, and setter in high school. And I'm a setter. Like, that's my position. My middle blocker for my club team played 4 years at Xavier University as a setter. So no, it does not matter what position you play on any team. If you are good enough and you're a good enough athlete and a coach wants you, you're going to find a spot.
And you may have played one position your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And that coach may already have a different position for you they haven't told you about yet.
Exactly.
So they have their own plan in mind, and it doesn't matter. Again, they get paid a lot of money to know those things. It doesn't matter where you're playing. So, Mac, fact or fiction in college recruiting, being taller matters.
Fiction.
Mac.
No, Chloe Chacoin.
Okay.
Claire Chaussee. Like, let me go down the list of hitters that have played at Louisville. Like, I actually don't think, I think your athletic ability matters more than your height. I mean, there's an extent where it doesn't help anymore. I mean, we talk about Marley Smith. Does being taller matter for her? Like, she's going to get the opportunities, even though she's not tall enough. I think being tall definitely can help you in some ways, but a coach might not be looking for that. They might be looking for a scrappy setter that can go play. They might be looking for a high-flying Chloe Chacoin outside hitter, Claire Chaussee outside hitter. So I think that there's good opportunities for players if you are athletic enough. And I think if you're not tall enough, you have to be a good jumper. You do. You've got to benefit in some way. You've got to even that out. But no, I don't think height is end-all be-all.
No, height is not the end-all be-all, but it definitely is a factor, and
sure. I mean, the age-old saying, you can't coach height. That is true.
Right.
That will always be true.
You're right. The saying of how high you play matters much more, but sure. it definitely does not hurt. And in a tiebreaker, I think height would win. So if you got to decide, be taller. If you get your choice.
Wouldn't we all?
It doesn't hurt. Okay, so Matt, does getting all tournament help your recruiting? Mac.
Okay, so here's where I go with this. No, I know you. This. I'm blind reacting to all of these questions. So getting all tourney, does it help? No, not really.
Not at all.
It's just another thing that they're throwing on. They're not even really watching the players, probably. They're just like taking the same players every single tournament, get the same.
I'm going to jump in and help Mac out. That is fiction. Coaches don't look at who gets all tournament at all. It doesn't.
No, I'm not saying coaches do, but if your name isn't already out there and you end up on that list, that helps.
I'm going to disagree on that. We're going to move on. I don't think anybody reads. Again, certain coaching staff get together on Monday morning and rearrange their recruiting board because of the all tournament team.
No, I didn't say that.
You just said that helped your recruiting.
I think coaches became aware of my name because I was out there more.
What? They became aware of your name because they're sitting on your court and you were really good.
Yeah.
That's why they became aware of your name.
Mm-hmm.
Not because you were all tournament. Because the all tournament are the same 85% of the names every week, and then they flutter in two random names every week.
Right.
I mean, you want to put together like 80% of the Triple Crown all tournament team right now?
We absolutely could.
We could.
Yeah.
That's right. Position. Oh, that was so good. We asked you twice. Well, on that line, do your rankings matter?
No, I mean, we've answered that question the entire show.
We have. Attitude off the court, is that important? This is a trick question.
Yeah, arguably more important than on the court.
Yeah, and we're actually going to do one of our upcoming lessons about this, and it's called the ability. It's called your ability to the program ratio. Unfortunately, it just kind of depends on how good you are. Really.
Sure. Yeah.
Kind of with your attitude as well. So if you're a really average player, your attitude matters a lot.
It's true.
Unfortunately, if you're really, really awesome, then you get to have a worse attitude and you get a lot more options. But that's
true. There are some coaches out there who will pass up on players, but those players are just going to go somewhere else.
Unless you're really, really, really awesome.
Fair.
And then they don't pass up.
Yeah.
Okay, so playing open level, does that matter in your recruiting?
I think this goes the same thing that you've been saying is like, if you're good enough, the coaches will find you. Right,
but explain to parents or kids why it does a little bit.
Yeah, I think open level teams, open is where the coaches are. The college coaches hang out at the open. So if you want to be seen, you need to be in the open wave. It's hard for them to come find you. Even if you are really good and you're playing on a team that's not in the open division, it's hard for them to come find you because you're not where they are. So you need to put yourself in a position to be where the coaches are, and that's where the open division is. I think that's another one of those things too, that like open level kids play against other open level kids, and that's the top of the top. And those are the kids that are going to be able to succeed in college. So that's why the coaches are looking at them. So even if you're in a lower tier, a lower level playing, and you're sending your film off and you look great playing against basically lower level volleyball players, coaches are going to look at that and be like, okay, well, cool, you can bounce balls against lower level volleyball players that won't play in college. Let's see what you could do against the open level girls, but you've never played at that level, so you're never going to get that chance that you would want. So it does, but at the same time, I think what we've been saying still stands true. If you really are good enough, they will come find you.
Right. Yeah, and so there's always going to be examples for either side of the coin, right? Like the Andy Jacksons. Right, smaller club. But what they're saying is on those clubs, you don't get near as many chances. Like coaches might make the one loop for the afternoon wave, and they might walk by your court one time. They might sit there for 2 minutes, and you might get 2 or 3 plays, really, and that might be your only shot. You might, whereas open, they're probably going to watch you a couple of times. So right. You get more opportunities to prove yourself. The other thing is exactly like Max said, they understand if you're playing it open, you're playing that level consistently. And they understand that you're used to that week in, week out, where if you dominate at a lower level, that's the level you're playing week in, week out. So they just wonder if you're able to perform at a higher level because they really haven't seen you perform at that level. Right? So those are the answers. And again, if these are the things we talk about on Straight Talk Recruiting and answering your questions, because these are a lot of things that still continuously come up, and we'll be diving more into your personal questions as we head into the heart of recruiting. So look us up, Straight Talk, or reach out to us on VB Adrenaline if you're interested, and we'd love to add you as part of our growing family. But before we take off and wrap up, a lot more kids, one thing that you're interested to maybe see at the weekend, are there teams? Are there maybe some kids we haven't talked about that you're just interested or have an asterisk by, that a name? I have about 15 other names that that we haven't gotten to that I want to see, but is there anybody?
I kind of also have like a list of like a bunch of names that I would love to see. We don't have enough time. It's way past my bedtime, but I mean, we can talk about all. But I will say, I'll give my one player shout out because I think that she's very underrated. Lyric Judson, middle blocker from Premier, Nebraska. Have you heard that name?
Yes.
Okay. I hadn't seen her before, and like, wow. I just wrote down, wow. That was all I had in my notes at first, because I think she is a middle blocker that is defensive, offensive, all around, so strong. She attacks really well. She's fast, and she's extremely powerful, which I think is tough because a lot of these girls are not that strong yet at this age group, and she's strong. Like, I don't even know that she's done a ton of weightlifting, but she is very strong. She's over every single block that she sees, and she just bounces balls. She sees, it's like she's up there, she sees the block, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go the other way. Okay, I see you, I'm going to go the other way. So she's really powerful in the angles, and she avoids the block so well. So I am excited to watch her and her team play. Overall, big picture, I'm really excited for power pools. I think power pools are always exciting because it's just the best of the best beating up on each other. And I think that's fun for college coaches too, because they have to do less work. They just get to stand in one corner, and all 4 of their courts are all of their prospects on one little end. So I think that's fun for everybody.
I think I'm excited because I talked to quite a few of the 26s, the parents that, they go through the gauntlet last year and talk to them this year. I'm like, you feel any different? They're like, oh my God. Yeah. Thank goodness. Right. Now they can relax and interested to talk to them now that the pressure is kind of off and see some of them now. And it's always amazing to me. I know they grow every year, but that 16s to 17s year,
Big.
Maturity and the strength. So just to see some of them, even though we're not big enough yet, we can't cover them as intently, but and then some of the new names and see where it's always kind of like a little reunion, I guess, to see where where the coaches are hunting around and who the hot names are and it's so cool to see the names that none of us are talking about, and when all of a sudden there's a gaggle of coaches around writing down a new name, it's cool that somebody making a name for themselves. And I promise you there will be names, and that leads us into our last little slide. Now listen, we know we are not mentioning near enough names, but we promise you we are so far from perfect. And here's evidence. Okay, last year, if you didn't get mentioned tonight, don't feel bad. Here are just some of the names that last year we didn't know about. Well, Mac's off the hook because she wasn't part of the crew. But me, I had no clue who these 4 ladies were a year ago, and they ended up okay. So Gabby DeVita and Lenny Tarno, Sydney Burley, who, if you know, we went to bat for her pretty hard, and then McKenna Crossan, one of the Gophers' top prospects. Gabby DeVita, we interviewed her right after Triple Crown when her team went on such a run, and actually it was Dynasty versus Legacy. No. Legacy versus your crew. It was Mintonette versus Legacy in the finals in the championship. And that was the cool Michigan Ohio battle.
That's fun.
That was fun. And then Gabby DeVita was such, you want to talk about an intense competitor, but then there was big time competitors on both of those teams. And then Sydney Burley about wanting to rip my head off when I asked her for an interview after they lost. And I told you that story, like, how could, it's just a stupid volleyball match, kid. Like, who cares? That was the wrong thing to say. But then Liddy Tarno, of course, going to Wisconsin. So what we're saying is, don't worry about if we didn't mention you. These guys could care less, and they're just fine. And so you're out there. The coaches notice you. You do your work, and they'll do theirs. you'll be great. And eventually we'll catch on. We're just slow learners. So you guys take care of your business. The coaches will do theirs. We promise you. And eventually we'll catch up to y'all. But have a great time in whether it's KC, whether it's DC, whether it's Orlando, whether it's St. Louis, wherever you might be playing. Best of luck to you. And number one, be a great teammate and play as hard as you can. Those are the things you can control. And your recruiting, just let it happen. Rules are changing, seems like every day. You can't control those things. You'll get educated as the time comes, but control what you can and let everything else take care of itself. For Mac and myself, we thank you. Best of luck this weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon. And take care, everybody.